Lisa Martinez, a 34-year-old environmental engineer and mother of 2 young children, thought her biggest challenge was convincing her husband Michael that solar panels were worth the investment. Then Frank Whitmore knocked on their door at 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning demanding she remove the unauthorized eyesores from her roof within 48 hours. What unfolded over the next 3 months would test everything she believed about environmental responsibility, community fairness, and protecting her family's future. Before this story begins, consider, how well do you really know what your HOA can actually control? This happened just 8 months ago in a planned community outside Phoenix, Arizona. The Martinez family still lives there today, and their solar panels are still generating clean energy. After hearing this, you'll never look at a covenant restriction the same way again. Lisa had always been the type of person who researched everything twice before making any major decision. As an environmental engineer for a renewable energy consulting firm, she understood better than most homeowners exactly what installing solar panels would mean for both her family's finances and their carbon footprint. She had spent 3 months getting quotes, comparing systems, and running calculations that showed the panels would pay for themselves within 7 years while cutting their electricity bills by 80%. The Martinez family lived in Sunset Ridge, a middle-class planned community of 240 homes built in 2018. Lisa and Michael had chosen this neighborhood specifically because it felt like the perfect place to raise Emma, their 8-year-old daughter who loved science projects, and Connor, their 6-year-old son who collected rocks and dreamed of becoming a geologist. The community featured wide sidewalks perfect for bike riding, a playground where the children made friends, and HOA maintained landscaping that kept property values stable. Lisa had done everything by the book. She submitted her architectural review application to the HOA in January, including detailed technical specifications, installation plans, and photos showing exactly how the panels would look on their roof. She obtained all required city permits, scheduled inspections with the municipal building department, and hired Solar Tech Solutions, a local company with 15 years of experience and outstanding reviews. She even chose panels with a low profile and dark frames that would blend aesthetically with their home's charcoal gray roof tiles. The installation went smoothly over 2 days in March. Lisa felt a surge of pride watching the technicians carefully position each panel, knowing that within weeks, her family would be generating their own clean electricity. Emma and Connor were fascinated by the process, asking endless questions about how sunlight could power their refrigerator and video games. Lisa explained how the panels would help protect the planet they would inherit, turning their home into a small but meaningful part of the solution to climate change. For 3 weeks, everything worked exactly as promised. Their March electricity bill dropped to just $37, and the app on Lisa's phone showed their system generating an average of 34 kilowatt-hours per day. She felt the satisfaction of making a decision that aligned perfectly with both her professional expertise and her personal values. Michael, initially skeptical about the $18,000 investment, began bragging to neighbors about their energy savings. Then Frank Whitmore appeared at their front door that Tuesday morning, holding a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone who enjoyed delivering bad news. Frank had served as HOA president for 6 years, winning re-election each time by running unopened. At 58, he was a retired insurance executive who treated his volunteer HOA position like a full-time job, driving through the neighborhood daily looking for violations and maintaining detailed files on every household. Frank informed Lisa that her solar panels violated the community's architectural guidelines and constituted an unauthorized modification to her home's exterior appearance. He handed her a formal violation notice demanding removal within 48 hours or face daily fines of $50. Lisa stared at the document, confused and increasingly angry. She had submitted her application, received no response for 60 days, and proceeded with the installation assuming approval, exactly as outlined in the HOA bylaws. When Lisa explained that she had followed all proper procedures, Frank dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand. He stated that the architectural committee had determined the panels were too visible from the street and created an inappropriate industrial appearance that could negatively impact property values throughout the community. Lisa pointed out that 3 other homes in Sunset Ridge already had solar installations that were clearly visible, but Frank claimed those systems had been improperly approved and would also need to be addressed. Lisa spent that evening reviewing every document in her HOA file. The architectural guidelines contained only vague language about maintaining aesthetic harmony, and requiring appropriate materials and colors. There was nothing specifically prohibiting solar panels, and the state of Arizona had passed legislation in 2009 explicitly preventing HOAs from banning solar installations. She felt confident in her legal position, but worried about the escalating conflict and potential financial consequences. The next morning, Lisa called the architectural committee to request a formal hearing. She discovered that the committee consisted entirely of Frank Whitmore and 2 other board members who rarely participated in decisions. Margaret Thornfield, a retired teacher who served as secretary, admitted she had never seen Lisa's original application. Harold Kensington, the treasurer, claimed he didn't remember reviewing any solar panel requests despite Lisa's certified mail receipts proving delivery. When Lisa pressed for specifics about which guidelines her panels violated, Frank became evasive and increasingly aggressive. He insisted that the board had discretionary authority to reject any modification that might impact property values or community appearance. He refused to provide written documentation of the committee's decision-making process or explain why identical solar installations on Maple Street and Oak Avenue had been permitted while hers was deemed unacceptable. Lisa realized she was dealing with more than just bureaucratic confusion. Frank's hostility seemed personal, and his explanations didn't align with the facts. She began researching HOA law and discovered that Arizona regulations required architectural committees to provide written responses to applications within 60 days. Frank's failure to respond within the required timeframe legally constituted approval of her project. Meanwhile, the daily $50 fines began accumulating. Each morning, Lisa found another violation notice in her mailbox, adding to a growing financial burden that threatened to erase the savings she had calculated from her solar installation. Michael grew increasingly frustrated, questioning whether they should just remove the panels to end the conflict, but Lisa refused to be bullied into abandoning a legal and beneficial home improvement. The situation escalated when Lisa received a letter from the HOA's attorney, threatening legal action if she didn't comply with the removal demand. The lawyer claimed that Lisa's continued violation of community standards constituted a breach of her homeowner agreement and could result in additional penalties including liens against her property. Lisa felt the walls closing in, realizing that fighting the HOA could cost thousands in legal fees they couldn't afford. Lisa decided to attend the next monthly HOA meeting to present her case directly to the community. She prepared a detailed presentation showing her compliance with all regulations, the environmental and financial benefits of solar energy, and the legal protections provided by state law. She hoped that reasonable neighbors would support her position once they understood the facts. The meeting took place on a Thursday evening in the community center, with about 30 residents in attendance. Lisa felt nervous, but determined, as she waited for her turn to speak during the homeowner comment period. She noticed several neighbors avoiding eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with the growing controversy that was dividing their usually peaceful community. When Lisa presented her case, she spoke calmly about following proper procedures, obtaining required permits, and choosing panels designed to minimize visual impact. She explained that solar installations actually increased property values according to recent studies and helped establish their community as environmentally progressive. She emphasized that her family's commitment to clean energy reflected values that many neighbors shared. Frank's response was swift and dismissive. He stated that individual preferences could not override community standards, and that allowing unauthorized modifications would set a dangerous precedent. He claimed that several neighbors had complained about the panel's appearance, though he refused to identify specific complainants or provide written documentation of their concerns. What happened next surprised everyone in the room. Margaret Thornfield, the normally quiet secretary, stood up and contradicted Frank's account. She revealed that no architectural committee meeting had ever been held to review Lisa's application, and that she had never received any neighbor complaints about the solar panels. Her statement created an uncomfortable silence, as residents realized their HOA president had been misrepresenting the situation. Harold Kensington, the treasurer, added that he had reviewed the community's finances and discovered that the accumulated fines from Lisa's violation were being deposited into a special account rather than the general fund. When pressed for details about this account, Frank became visibly agitated and declared the meeting adjourned despite several residents requesting more information. Lisa left the meeting feeling both vindicated and more concerned than before. Margaret's revelations had exposed Frank's deceptive tactics, but the mystery of the special account suggested deeper problems with the HOA's management. She decided to investigate further, using her analytical skills to uncover what Frank was trying to hide. Over the next week, Lisa researched public records and discovered troubling information about Frank's background and potential conflicts of interest. Property records showed that Frank owned rental properties throughout the Phoenix area, several of which had been cited for code violations and maintenance issues. More significantly, corporate filings revealed that Frank held substantial stock in Arizona Public Service Company, the regional utility provider that stood to lose revenue from residential solar installations. Lisa realized that Frank's opposition to her solar panels wasn't about aesthetics or property values. It was about protecting his personal financial interests in traditional energy companies. His position as HOA president gave him power to discourage solar adoption throughout the community, potentially preserving utility company profits that indirectly benefited his investment portfolio. Armed with this information, Lisa felt more confident about confronting Frank and demanding a resolution. She also began reaching out to other homeowners who might be interested in solar installations, discovering that several families had been discouraged from pursuing renewable energy by Frank's warnings about HOA restrictions and potential violations. The turning point came when Lisa contacted the Arizona Corporation Commission, the state agency responsible for utility regulation and consumer protection. A representative explained that HOAs were prohibited by state law from unreasonably restricting solar installations and that Frank's actions could constitute illegal interference with homeowner rights. The commission offered to investigate the situation and potentially impose penalties against the HOA. Lisa also discovered that 3 other families in Sunset Ridge had been quietly paying fines for various HOA violations while Frank consistently exempted his friends and supporters from similar penalties. Tom and Susan Rodriguez on Maple Street had been fined repeatedly for parking their work trailer in their driveway, while Frank's next-door neighbor kept a similar trailer without any consequences. The pattern suggested systematic abuse of power for personal and political purposes. When Lisa shared her findings with Margaret and Harold, they were shocked by the extent of Frank's deception and conflicts of interest. Margaret revealed that Frank had been making decisions unilaterally, claiming board approval for actions that were never discussed or voted upon. Harold admitted that Frank had pressured him to approve questionable financial transactions without proper documentation or oversight. The 3 board members called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Lisa was invited to present her research and recommendations for resolving the dispute. She proposed that the HOA immediately rescind her violation notice, refund all accumulated fines, and establish clear guidelines for solar installations that complied with state law while maintaining reasonable aesthetic standards. Frank initially refused to attend the emergency meeting, claiming that the other board members lacked authority to override his decisions as president. When he finally appeared, he was defensive and argumentative, denying any wrongdoing and accusing Lisa of harassment and defamation. His behavior only reinforced growing concerns about his fitness for leadership. The confrontation reached its climax when Harold presented financial records showing that Frank had been depositing violation fines into a personal account rather than the HOA's general fund. Frank claimed this was a bookkeeping error, but bank records revealed a pattern of similar transfers over several months. The revelation constituted potential embezzlement and grounds for criminal prosecution. Margaret made a motion to remove Frank as president and appoint an interim board to investigate financial irregularities. Harold seconded the motion, and despite Frank's protests, the vote passed unanimously among the remaining board members present. Frank stormed out of the meeting, threatening legal action against anyone who questioned his authority or damaged his reputation. Lisa felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion as the immediate crisis finally reached resolution. The new interim board immediately rescinded her violation notice, refunded the accumulated fines, and issued a formal apology for the illegal harassment she had endured. They also established a transparent process for reviewing architectural applications and promised to comply with all state regulations regarding solar installations. The community response was overwhelmingly positive. Many neighbors approached Lisa to thank her for standing up to Frank's abuse of power and expressed interest in learning more about solar energy. Several families began researching their own installations, and Lisa offered to share her experience and technical knowledge to help them make informed decisions. Within 6 weeks, the interim board had uncovered additional financial irregularities, totaling nearly $8,000 in misappropriated funds. Frank was forced to resign from the board entirely and repay the stolen money to avoid criminal prosecution. He sold his home and moved out of Sunset Ridge before the end of summer, unable to face the consequences of his actions. Margaret was elected as the new HOA president, running on a platform of transparency, fiscal responsibility, and respecting homeowner rights. Under her leadership, the board established clear architectural guidelines that encouraged energy efficiency and environmental responsibility while maintaining community standards. They also implemented financial controls and oversight procedures to prevent future abuse. Lisa's solar panels continued generating clean electricity and saving her family money on utility bills. The system performed even better than originally projected, reducing their carbon footprint by an estimated 4 tons of CO2 per year. Emma and Connor proudly told their friends about living in a house powered by sunshine, and Lisa used their experience to teach them about standing up for what's right even when it's difficult. The broader impact extended far beyond Lisa's personal victory. 7 additional families in Sunset Ridge installed solar panels over the following year, making their community a model for sustainable living. The local newspaper featured Lisa's story as an example of how individual homeowners could overcome institutional resistance to environmental progress. Lisa also became involved in advocating for stronger state protections for solar rights, testifying before the Arizona legislature about HOA abuses and the need for clearer enforcement mechanisms. Her professional expertise and personal experience made her a compelling advocate for policies that would protect other homeowners from similar harassment. The experience taught Lisa valuable lessons about the importance of persistence, research, and community organizing when facing institutional opposition. She discovered strengths she didn't know she possessed and developed confidence in her ability to fight for her family's interests and values. The conflict that initially threatened her peace of mind ultimately empowered her to become a more effective advocate and leader. Michael gained new respect for Lisa's determination and environmental commitments. The solar panels became a symbol of their family's values and their willingness to invest in the future they wanted their children to inherit. The financial savings allowed them to establish college funds for Emma and Connor while reducing their environmental impact. Margaret's leadership transformed the HOA from an adversarial organization into a collaborative community resource. She established committees for environmental initiatives, neighborhood beautification, and social activities that brought residents together around shared interests, rather than dividing them through arbitrary rules and selective enforcement. The Sunset Ridge community became known throughout the Phoenix area as a model for balancing homeowner rights with community standards. Property values increased as the neighborhood gained a reputation for environmental leadership and good governance. Real estate agents began highlighting the community's solar-friendly policies as a selling point for environmentally conscious buyers. Lisa's story spread beyond their local community through social media and environmental advocacy networks. She received messages from homeowners across the country facing similar battles with their HOAs over solar installations and other green improvements. Lisa began offering advice and support to help others navigate these conflicts successfully. The legal precedent established by Lisa's case also helped strengthen enforcement of solar rights laws throughout Arizona. The Corporation Commission cited her experience as evidence of the need for clearer penalties against HOAs that illegally restrict renewable energy installations. Several other communities modified their architectural guidelines to ensure compliance with state law. Frank's downfall served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority in community governance. His attempted abuse of power ultimately backfired, resulting in stronger oversight and accountability measures that protected all residents from similar mistreatment. The financial consequences of his embezzlement also deterred other potential bad actors from similar schemes. Lisa continued working as an environmental engineer while becoming increasingly involved in community advocacy. She joined the board of a regional renewable energy organization and began speaking at conferences about overcoming barriers to residential solar adoption. Her professional reputation was enhanced by her successful defense of homeowner rights and environmental values. The Martinez family's home became a gathering place for neighbors interested in sustainability and community involvement. Lisa organized educational workshops about energy efficiency, water conservation, and other environmental topics. Emma and Connor grew up understanding that their parents had fought for their right to live according to their values, instilling lessons about courage and principled action. Years later, Lisa reflected on how the solar panel conflict had transformed not just her family's relationship with their community, but her understanding of her own capabilities and responsibilities. What began as a simple home improvement project had evolved into a larger mission of environmental advocacy and community leadership that continued shaping her family's life. The solar panels on the Martinez family's roof continued generating clean electricity, serving as a daily reminder that individual actions could create positive change even in the face of institutional resistance. Lisa's victory proved that ordinary homeowners could successfully defend their rights and values when armed with knowledge, persistence, and community support. Today, Sunset Ridge stands as proof that communities can embrace both environmental responsibility and harmonious living. Lisa's courage in standing up to Frank Whitmore's abuse of power created lasting changes that benefited not just her family, but every resident who valued fairness, transparency, and the right to make responsible choices about their homes and futures. The panels that once sparked such controversy now symbolize a community's commitment to progress, sustainability, and the principle that individual rights and collective well-being can coexist when guided by mutual respect and shared values. Lisa Martinez's fight for her family's solar panels became a victory for everyone who believes that communities should support, rather than suppress, their members' efforts to build a better world. If this situation unfolded in your neighborhood, would you find the courage to stand up like Lisa did? Sometimes protecting what matters most requires us to discover strength we never knew we had. When faced with abuse of power, whether in an HOA boardroom or any other community setting, we each have a choice: remain silent and hope someone else takes action, or step forward and defend the principles that make communities truly worth living in. Lisa's story reminds us that ordinary people can create extraordinary change.